I think that's where a lot of these sort of innovators and digital pioneers are going to take it. It might have started on the blockchain, but the ones who are continuing to succeed and innovate are taking it in different directions and bigger directions. And certainly I don't think you can get much bigger than, millions of cups at McDonald's that are branded in Doodles. Like that is pretty prolific. So major hats off to their team. Hello, Sam. How are you doing?
Hey, Avery, great to see you. I'm doing great. Hey, what's going on in your background? I see water bottles. I see Gary V. Do I see Tony Robbins? What's going on here?
You do see Gary and Tony Robbins. There's a gigantic stack of day trading attention books on the shelf in my office. I'm actually heading off to Miami Ad School this evening to do a talk for some advertising folks. I'm going to bring them only the best book for modern marketers to read.
Of course, we all need to day trade attention, which I kind of feel is a little bit of what we're going to talk about today. We don't have a guest. We're just going to get into all the stuff that's happening. It's been a crazy, crazy week, Avery, and there's so many things I wanted to talk to you about. The first is, I'm not one to use the "we are so back" phrase lightly, but this week the entire internet was abuzz around this collaboration with McDonald's and the Doodles NFT collection, which, despite all best efforts from a lot of the haters, seems to still be going, still be thriving. They're doing some great stuff. And the biggest one that they've talked about is this collaboration with McDonald's, which hit McDonald's Twitter account. There's some ridiculous number of millions of cups being produced with Doodles characters on them. It actually feels like a pretty big moment for that brand. I just want to see, get your thoughts on, is this the beginning of another round of brand and kind of blockchain IP coming together and trying to make something happen again?
It absolutely is. We will not say we're so back. We will not say wag me, but we are going to say that this has been an incredibly exciting week in the world of crypto, in the world of digital collectibles, in the world of the crypto influencers and OpenSea and the whole thing. It's been all the NFT group chats are firing. People are creating new group chats about meme coins. Just the cycle repeats is sort of like what I'm feeling, Sam. Have you made your way to McDonald's this week?
McDonald's isn't really on my current diet, so I haven't. But what's interesting is Julian Hogan, who's the CEO of Doodles, I think, if I remember correctly, was the president of Billboard magazine for a long time. According to him, he said the partnership spans music, animation, collecting culture, online communities. The fact that McDonald's and creators always seem to get together. It does feel like kind of the largest or one of the largest Web3 integrations we've ever seen. So I know we will not say any of the phrasing you mentioned. The thing that sort of pops out for me, there's obviously been a lot of talk of pudgy penguins over the last year. Doodles seem to continue to be there. I believe there's a movie or like an animation, something coming along that still involves Pharrell. I should be more up to speed on that. There's a new merch line coming that's in relation to this McDonald's drop. It does speak to me to say nowhere in any of the communications is there a mention of an NFT, which we all believe is the right way to go.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that these millions of cups and products are going to be out there does seem to be like, if you want to educate children that there is a new animation property coming, this is probably a great way to do that. And so, yeah, I don't know. I got very bullish just about the fact that this even happened. I thought this was a beautiful sign that Web3 isn't completely dead and that there's some sparks of life. We'll see if that becomes a forest fire. But yeah, I don't know. I'm feeling like this was
I
good.
think that you're right that it's, yes, maybe born on the blockchain is a good way to put it. So for those who are watching this on YouTube, you can see this book, which is called Meet You in the Middle. And yes, it's reversible. This book is actually the VFriend's first children's book, written by Gary, #1 New York Times bestselling author. And the reason I sort of am holding this up and talking about it is because I think it's very similar to the animation thing, right? It's like it was born in the blockchain, but that's not how the next wave of consumers are going to interact with it. It reminds me of our friend who started Leisure Project, which is a hydration beverage, which is sold at specialty stores like Erewhon. I just had one this morning because he just moved to Miami. And they also originally launched with this Leisure Creatures NFT that certainly was a digital collectible, and they, you can continue to get discounts and things like that. But now they've turned it into this whole other, more sort of normal CPG brand that was just born on the blockchain but is now scaled into grocery stores. Similar to maybe Doodles is being born in the blockchain, scaling into animation projects. similar to VeeFriends being born in the blockchain, scaling into, big YouTube series, children's books, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on and on. I think that's where a lot of these sort of innovators and digital pioneers are going to take it. It might have started on the blockchain, but the ones who are continuing to succeed and innovate are taking it in different directions and bigger directions. And certainly, I don't think you can get much bigger than, millions of cups at McDonald's that are branded in Doodles. Like that is pretty prolific. So major hats off to their team.
Yeah, and maybe what you're saying in an interesting way is Web3 may have just been early Kickstarter for some of these brands. It gave them some startup funds to create something and allowed a community to come along the way and be your vocal advocates, your champions, the folks out there talking. And even though there's still a little too much number go up mentality in the crypto space, a lot of these teams sort of just ignored that and they just kept pushing forward on what they were making. And now perhaps we're seeing the fruits of those labors, and maybe it's actually the appropriate amount of time. It took us 2 years, it took us 3 years to go from something to what felt like now it's a company that has some potential. So it's pretty
It
exciting.
really has some potential. And there's probably going to be other formerly known as NFT projects who go on to do really prolific things. And now is like the time when we're starting to see some of that really take off and that snowball keep rolling and building. I don't know if McDonald's just timed it perfectly for this, like right around crypto coming back, but the timing literally couldn't have been better just in terms of like public perception really shifting around how like mainstream consumers feel about crypto or crypto adjacent companies. So very well done. We should actually get G on here, who runs all that stuff at McDonald's. He's amazing, really smart. So I'm going to add that to my to-do list.
Amazing. We should absolutely do that. I think if anyone out there who's listening is part of the Super Yetis community, just know I'm always here to help develop IP for the world's greatest NFT project, the Super Yetis. Very,
There we
very low
go.
floor price if anyone wants to buy. Do your own research, not financial advice. Okay, Avery, the second story topic I wanted to talk to you about. We've been now for the past 2 weeks, I think, talking about the election. And I don't want to actually talk about the election in that respect. What I do think is really fascinating is there's been so many moments that we have said the influencer trend is waning or it's waxing or it's super hot right now or, it's chilly, all of the things that come with it. But I've looked at a couple of different signals and I want to get your take on this. My thesis is, this past Friday, when we're recording this past Friday was the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson fight. And within that fight, two of the boxers, right? Jake Paul, obviously one of the most well-known influencers out there. And then,
Certainly.
I'm not going to say his name correctly. I think it was Gautier, who ended up being, I believe, the Indian champion who won in like the featherweight fight. He also is an actor and has come into boxing just like Jake has from the influential side. And so I looked at that fight and I said, this is like 60 million people watch this. This is not a small feat. And not only did Jake Paul get $40 million for participating in it, his company produced the event. Netflix spent $150 million, I believe, to get it. They've already said it paid dividends because it was their first really big live sporting event. And so when I take that as a signal of the attention it got, the fight itself was meh, as we all probably know who watched it. But it was a spectacular moment for like the like creator community. And then I think about just in the last couple of days, Dr. Oz being named to one of the, the positions in sort of Medicare and medical for Donald Trump's cabinet. Donald Trump himself is really a creator more than anything else, right? He's someone who just represents and embodies that. I saw yesterday the post that Kim Kardashian put up with the Tesla robot, the Optimus robot, and it's just like, I don't know, it just hit me all around that in many ways, if you are at the top of your class, it's never been better to be a creator, an influencer, someone who really owns your own brand and IP. And all of these people really just built it on their own hustle for good and for bad. There's a lot of detractors, but I guess as someone who probably still manages this stuff on a day-to-day basis, did Dr. Oz getting appointed, did it strike anything for you about like, we would not have predicted any of that 5 years ago. And yet here we are now.
Well, you might not have predicted this 5 years ago, Sam, but some people have. I mean, in some ways, like the Jake Paul ascent to sort of fame, he's really been riding that wave for quite some time with his brother Logan. They were Vine stars. I think that this has been in the water and this has sort of been building and happening from my POV for a while. And it's like slowly, then all at once. But if you think about it, especially in the last I would say in the last 5 years, we've seen creators take more in terms of media dollars. Like, right, you're part of a
Mhm.
publishing division, creators are taking those dollars themselves because they're able to build their own following and community. They don't need the traditional gatekeepers of information to do things. Like, the gatekeeper is the algorithm, and understanding those algorithms helps them, achieve significant engagement and reach, like, all by themselves. So that's been happening. They've also launched this into businesses, right? Like, you see companies like Shopify who are empowering these creators, not just to have their communities, but to sell them things online. And that is influencing even political appointments, right? Like, at the end of the day, communication is such a critical skill for political leaders as well. And I think that, the next administration probably places more weight in, like, who's going to break through on social mainstream channels than previous administrations have. So I think it's all following the same trajectory, and it's probably only going to continue going that way. Figuring out how to crack social leads to becoming a creator, leads to more power and influence in broader capacities.
I think you're right. I think the switch and the inflection for me are here you have the most watched sporting event, or the most watched boxing event, I believe, in history, which
Yeah.
was
No, no,
yeah,
no,
60,
no. That was
65
that
billion.
was wrong, because Rumble in the Jungle was more.
That's right. Okay, so we have one pre-internet, but in the modern
But
age,
also, how did you prove that? That's all, like, according to what, the history books say.
of course, of course. Okay, so one of the largest boxing events done in history, I believe, outside of anything in Vegas, the event itself was the highest gate ever of any boxing match, and it's from someone who's, I mean, he's a boxer, but he's not a boxer in the way we think of, a lot of these modern boxers, right? He is fighting a 58-year-old man. He's not fighting the best in
Right.
his class at his age group, right? Because that, I think, would be a very different type of fight. But from purely the gameplay of attention, he won Friday big time. Again, we reelected someone who was an influencer, was a creator, was just a personality. Whether Donald Trump is a great businessman, a lot of people would say no. Whether he is a great entertainer, a lot of people agree, yes. And to the point where he's now been appointed to the greatest political comeback in history in winning the presidency again. To me, there's a difference of just scale. And again, internet is scale for us right now, is the thing that really is just amazing me, that we can have, in the same way we have, Selena Gomez and Rare Beauty, right? Or Rihanna with Fenty, like, some of the hottest beauty lines in the world now are influencer driven or creator driven. It's just a different paradigm at a scale that I think is just so much. It's not like actors didn't have products before, or
Right.
actors weren't the faces of products. The fact that actors now are becoming billionaires by launching beauty lines and leveraging hundreds of millions of people on social media in order to do that, that's where I just think, like, none of this happens without this emerging technology that we have now all been living with for the last 20 years, which is both, I still think it's good, and there's some bad about it too. Like it's hard to think about being a craft person, a creative who doesn't have that scale, being able to compete. And I think that's another
I guess, Sam,
thing
you and
about
I
it.
always go back and forth on this, because I think the craft of being able to crack the algorithms, like, that is the
Mhm.
craft, you know?
Yeah. That's the art. I get it.
That is the art. And people think it's like, oh, they're just, like, randomly going live on TikTok. I'm like, they're not randomly going live on TikTok. There is a strategy behind this. There's a lot of thought that goes into it. Like, being great at social media is very hard.
Totally. I'm not saying it's not a skill. I think it's an amazing skill. And I think every person I've ever met who has a kid who wants to be a YouTube star, it's the first thing I say is, you have
Here's
no
what I
idea.
always say is,
No
like,
idea.
anyone
Yeah.
can do it, not everyone can do it. Because it's not like one necessarily, like, archetype, right? Like, you could be an
Yes.
amazing animator, or you could be someone who's funny, or you could be beautiful, or you could be ugly. Like, you could be any of the things, right? It's like, long as you have, like, your unique stick. And yeah, a lot of kids want to be influencers, and it's like a lot of kids want to be astronauts. Very few actually are able to do so successfully.
Correct. Correct. I think, but again, where I'm going with this is the rules have changed because the landscape has completely changed, which is
Correct.
not the first time it's happened, right? But when you think of Christian Louboutin learning the craft of making shoes, spending the time it took him
Yes.
to do that, then building his own brand, and the decades and decades and decades it came to, and then you have Selena Gomez in 2 or 3 years having one of the most successful beauty brands, really because of the power of scale. That's where I think there's just a different, and agree, it's a absolute skill and luck and team and right time, all of those things to make it happen. But there just was this inflection moment that many of us didn't see coming, I would say 20 years ago, that, it reminds me, I'm just going to tangent for a second. When we had Vanessa Colella on from Visa,
Yeah.
right? She and I had a little bit of a side conversation about the book Being Digital by Nicholas Negroponte, which was an unbelievable inspirational book for me about technology. I went back and read the book again after that episode, and the book came out, I think, 1998, 1999, and it was really about the emerging internet. When I read that book for the second time, knowing what I know now in 2024, I read it and I was like, this was a blueprint for vast amounts of wealth and opportunity if you were paying attention.
Right.
Probably 80% of that book charted out where things were going, and he happened to be at the exact right place to know those things. And so if you were smart enough as an investor or an entrepreneur to read that book and be like, I'm going to go all in on this mantra that he is writing about, you would have had a leg up on almost everybody, because he predicted so much of what was going on now based on a lot of conversations he was seeing happening at MIT. And some of that is the internet, right? It's in the book at the scale we're talking about in 1998. It's just, I didn't look at, I was like, this is fun. And then I went on to play video games or build events.
Right.
I didn't say I'm completely changing my career. And I think that's just something that feels like, and this maybe is why I feel continually caught off guard by these things. Cause I'm like, I can't believe it's happening, but I can totally believe it's happening in the same way. I don't know what the lessons are here. I think, one of the things I think we should do is get a few more of top creators on the show who can also talk about that.
I agree. I think between TikTok and Patreon and OnlyFans, there are also these new creator monetization models that are coming into, like, a lot of times people will think creators are only born on YouTube or on Instagram. And
Right.
while creators still are born on YouTube and Instagram, and even Twitter now, honestly, like X is kind of, while Blue Sky is taking off, X is also in an interesting moment where, like, some creators are breaking through and, some budgets are actually going back there. So I think across all of those, that would be really interesting for us to sort of dissect the anatomy of a winning creator on each of those platforms. Because let me also tell you, the creator who wins on X is going to be different than the creator who wins on OnlyFans or on, YouTube is going to be different than LinkedIn. Like, each has their own kind of shtick to it.
100%. And each has a different goal, I think, in mind.
Absolutely. Okay, Sam, so I'm going to ask you a question. What are you thinking of this sort of like crypto? We're back in the black. Retail is coming back. Coinbase is giving everybody Bitcoin at NBA games. What are you feeling right now in this cycle?
So, great question. I think that there's some macro things that we should be paying attention to. And again, this is not me. This is the ethos that if you're reading the tea leaves, it's probably worth paying into, which is, for a lot of this sort of bullish positioning in the market, the last 3 or 4 months, we were not seeing retail come in very much at all. In the last month and a half, if you look at the top financial apps on the Apple Store, you will see it is Robinhood, which trades crypto. It is Coinbase. It is Binance. It's all of the big crypto firms, which then says to me, yes, retail is coming in hard again. And why? Because there's unbelievable wealth to be made if you are early enough. Most people right now are going to get in not as early, right? If you bought Bitcoin a year ago, around this time, you'd be buying it around $35,000 a coin. Today, it's hovering in the 95,000, right? That's a 2x return on something in 1 year. There is no place you could have gotten that, maybe outside of NVIDIA or something like that in the public market. So I do think people are like, hey, there's money in them hills. Let's go run and do it. I think, and I've had a lot of people ask me, and of course I'm like, I don't want to tell you what to do. I look at it through the lens of, we are going to have moments coming, and this is very much not financial advice, do your own research about it, but we're going to have moments coming up soon. We know that Trump is going to try and appoint someone else to the SEC chair. That someone he's going to appoint will be more crypto friendly. That means crypto itself is going to have a better opportunity to be regulated in a way in which crypto companies just know what the rule is, and therefore they can build things which they have not been able to do. That's going to be a big moment. I think the fact that the administration itself is talking about things like a Bitcoin strategic reserve, and we're seeing other countries now adopt this, is a big moment. Everywhere along that way, people are going to sell. So it's why, we don't go from 90 to 100 immediately, because a lot of people have sell orders in for 93, 94, 95 because they want to take their profit out. But I do think we are going to see an adoption and a friendliness to it globally that we have not seen in crypto's history. And so that's why, whether or not it's Bitcoin almost doesn't matter, right? It's really, there's a ton of stuff happening on the AI side. There's a ton of stuff happening on the meme coin side, which is part of the discussion I want to have in a second. But I think that people are recognizing that this industry is in a better position than it's ever been. The fact that Polymarket had so much influence on the election, and Polymarket really behind the hood is primarily a crypto platform that is bringing more people into the idea of what does it mean to have USDC. That alone is, I think, a turning point. All the games in Asia that are doing similar. It's the right time. I think the question is, how aggressive are they going to be here? And then what are other countries going to do to play along? Because I think that's where we are seeing something that I've been in crypto since 2013. I've never seen an environment like this that feels like the promise and opportunity is there the way it is now. And I still think there's a lot of people who are going to get rugged. A lot of people are going to lose a lot of money. A lot of projects that are going to go out of business.
Of course, always,
You
because the
know,
cycle repeats itself, right?
exactly,
Like
exactly.
every cycle like gets bigger and bigger with crypto. There's more and more like real use cases, and there's always people who get burned. There are always people who make a ton of money. I was at a breakfast this morning with Jeff Carvalho and many of our friends in the Miami
Yeah.
tech scene, and they were talking about, oh, everybody's making all this money on meme coins. And we're like, we've seen this movie before. Pay attention and have fun. And I think the crypto casino, that's sort of a bit of like the draw of it for many people of playing around, launching new things. Got 12-year-old kids who are launching their own coins and creating huge market caps. But at the same time, always be really careful and know that these things run in cycles. So that was kind of my
But Avery,
takeaway.
I think that, no, it is a great takeaway. I think that, Avery, you and I have talked now probably for 3 months about this one topic, which I think is never a more important time to pay attention to it, which is that the financialization of culture is, in essence, that culture is always a market, right? And sometimes it's a social credit market. With Jordan's, it became a financial credit system. But I think that we are seeing something that is much larger than we think about, which is that the idea of people wanting to trade on information, and anyone from the old school internet days remembers the Hollywood Stock Exchange, which was the same thing, just not crypto. But the idea of, I can bet right now today on whether or not Inside Out 2 is going to be the highest grossing movie of the year. We have 5 weeks left, but 7% of the audience right now thinks it's not going to be, and they're willing to place a bet on that. Right. So to me, that's just a really interesting thing we should be thinking about. Or secondly, right, tonight, when we were recording this, Wednesday, November 20th, Sotheby's is launching an auction. One of the things an auction is Mauricio Catalan's The Comedian, which, if you don't remember, is the duct tape banana that was down at Art Basel in 1999, sold for $120,000 to $150,000. They're expecting, or the reserve price is $1 to $1.5 million on that piece alone. Many people are expecting it's going to go way higher than that. Not because it's a beautiful piece of art, it's literally a duct tape banana, but that it has such mimetic value that the person who owns this gets to say, I own that stupid thing that I paid $4 million, $6 million, $10 million for. But not only that, Avery, there is an entire community of tens of thousands of traders that are trading a banana meme coin based on that piece of art. And only on the fact that more people are talking about it because it's in every article. And now articles are starting to mention the coin. The coin has nothing to do with the art. Someone just created the market. So the idea that you are financializing culture through almost like an approved asset and then a completely rogue asset, and that both of them can rise, I think is something that we should be, as a meta, paying attention to.
Absolutely. And that it's easy for let's link this back to the creator conversation. It's easy for anyone to launch those things. Literally an
Yes.
AI chatbot is launching its own
Yes.
meme coins. And a 12-year-old kid is launching his own meme coins. So this is something that anybody can do, which in a way, yes, it's scary, it's beautiful, it's all the things, it just is. But
Right.
this is something that you were never able to do without crypto. Like, you can't just be like the Sam dollar and it's gonna be orange and
Right.
it's going to be made out of silk. Like, that's not how that works, right? Like, the digitalization of everything is now linked to the digitalization of money, and it creates a more level playing field for people to break through. But it also removes a lot of those, protection barriers like banks and things like that, which are also designed to help people be smarter and safer. And if you're applying for something like a mortgage, if any of our listeners and community like has gone through that process, it's so old school. It's like you're like literally like uploading these basic documents. They're like, can't you just like, I don't know, like scan my retina and know all this information? But it's so incredibly old school, in such sharp contrast to what we're seeing in like the crypto space, which is so new school. It's so fast. It's so transparent. It's just a completely different system. And I think the slowness of the traditional financial ecosystem continues to push the innovators to be like, there is a better way. I'm going to find it. And with that, they were taking down all those barriers. But yeah, I think it's actually a lot of like the same sort of meta conversation.
And just to play this out moving forward, right? We saw in this election that people were utilizing prediction markets to bet the market, but let's be real, to also game the market. It didn't help when there were stories constantly coming out about Trump's chances to win over and over and over based on Polymarket or Kalshi or any of these other markets that were out there. And so you're able to put your money against the cultural outcome you want, which to me is not that far from like fast forward 5 years and we have the Hunger Games where your crowd can send the gift to the competitor who's fighting for their life. And because you give them a leg up because you're putting money against it. And now you can also influence the outcome by spending against a positive outcome. Like these things aren't, they're going to happen. You know,
Yeah.
Squid Game's going to be real if we're not careful. And I think there's no stopping it. So I think it's something for us to keep an eye on. And it's a fascinating competition that has gambling, it has sports, it has all the things that people love to do, except most people don't like to lose money. And yet my one big caveat to anyone is just know there is someone else who is so much better than you at this that they are gaming you every meme coin that comes out. I am convinced there is a group of 10 to 20 to 50 crypto influencers that are in a chat who have already known that they're going to pump the next thing and they're just taking all of your money. And that is something that's going on.
Yes, exactly. Though it might be transparent, there's always things that happen behind the scenes, just like there is in the government and like in big banks and all the things, right? Like that's not only in crypto, but yes, I think you're right about that. I feel like the temperature in general, though, for normal people is coming back positive around this. You're
Mhm.
hearing these like rags to riches millionaire stories. I think
Yeah.
I've spoken to many crypto exchanges who are sort of have these charm offensives planned, which is just a PR term for wanting to get people to consider their brand in a more positive light, especially those that have undergone various scandals and things of that nature over the past couple of years. So I'm feeling bullish and continue to be long-term positive on this whole ecosystem. And also the more traditional financial institutions who are edging towards this, whether that's the PayPals and the Venmos or the Revoluts or the Visas or the JP Morgan Chases, because they certainly are not ignoring this. This is not going away.
Oh, definitely. And we have a guest coming on in a couple of weeks who I think is going to give us a really interesting perspective on kind of the financialization of culture and community, who's one of the early people who understood this and their new company focuses on it. Can't say more except that I think it'll be really interesting conversation. Avery, the final thing I want to talk to you about, just to bring it back to a previous guest of ours, post-election, one of our guests that we had on was Liz Hagethorn. Liz, who's kind of the meme queen, and we had a really great conversation with her, just released a post on LinkedIn. I sort of revealed that she was on the team working for Kamala Harris on the meme side. And she had a post that we're going to invite her to come back and tell us more about kind of her learnings from it, because I think just talk about being on the front lines of an unbelievable event. But one of the things that she mentioned in her post on LinkedIn was just the fact that the digital strategy that they did when it came to influencers led to almost 2 billion impressions itself, 1.65 billion, equivalent of about 85 million in earned revenue in just under 5 months. She talked about forming partnerships with some of the most prolific creators in the space, 106 different digital campaigns, drove unbelievable traction. That they went into gaming platforms and created game experiences. Those were over 500 million impressions. They did sound memes on TikTok that gained about 400 million impressions. And so when I looked at all these numbers, I was like, I mean, yes, of course, like you have an unbelievably passionate audience that wants to play the game of politics that they were leading in. But I just thought reading this, I was like, talk about a case study of success, regardless of the outcome here. One of the things that we were able to see in real time, and I want her to come on and talk again about, is just the nature of what it means at that scale to apply. And again, what Liz does really well, right? Memification of audio, memification of
Right.
video, memification of creators, understanding game worlds, all the things we talk about on a daily basis. That when I saw her results, we'll put a link to the post she put in the show notes. But I did think it was pretty incredible, the outcome. And my guess is there are similar outcomes on the Trump side as well of how they utilize podcasts and some of these other creators, especially across like Rumble and X and et cetera, to get scale. It's a totally new game. And I think there's so many lessons that actually creators themselves and brands should take away from some of these like battle tested people who have done this at that level with the stress of a political campaign behind them, who maybe are willing to talk about it. So I just thought it was a really interesting thing to note that regardless of what happens in the outcome of a campaign, whether that campaign is a political campaign or an advertising campaign, it's a changed landscape as we've been talking about this whole show.
It sure is. And I can't wait to hear what Liz says, especially because when she was last on the show, she was talking about something she was doing in the political space. And we suspected, but we didn't know that she was definitely working on the Harris campaign. And, regardless of the outcome of the election, I think she made a true dent in culture. And we just haven't seen a political campaign, I think, use social media for good like that, though Trump certainly had a very successful social media campaign as well. I am very much looking forward to having her back on, hearing her insights, and also hearing her think, of course, like what worked, but also what didn't work. Cause I know we run a million of these campaigns. We have like, great, these are the things we did well. And here's the things that like we didn't.
I hope she tells us what also, and she may not, but I hope she tells us what she wasn't allowed to do. Because I think that
Yes,
a lot of these campaigns are run
course.
so strict, right? And sometimes when you take the wheels off, that's where the opportunity can come, right? The one thing Trump, for example, one of the high profile things we all know is that Trump went on Joe Rogan and Kamala didn't. Supposedly the invite was there. If you listen to the Scott Galloway types, he's like, she should have just gotten on a plane and gone and did it no matter what. And supposedly she did not want to give him the power. She wanted him to come to her and on her home turf and all of that. Whereas Trump spent 3 hours with the guy, and that might have been a turning point in the election, right? So I think that's the kind of stuff that'd be really interesting to know. Or also as a lesson to brands, how do you let go sometimes, even though the let go might have negative second order effects? Are you willing to do it or not? And Trump seemed willing to, and maybe Kamala wasn't. We'll find out. All right, Avery, that's Gen C for this week.
That's a wrap. I am pumped for some of the next guests that we have coming on. Sam, great episode, great high energy. Everybody's feeling like we're back. So let's keep the good times rolling.
I can't believe you said that we're back. But
we're back. Had to end it with that.
As long as you don't say WAGMI, because we might have to end the show.
Exactly. You'd fire me as a co-host. Okay.
All right. Bye, Gen C.